Perfect Turd Podcast, episode 166, Lamar, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
So we're ruining childhoods. I guess that's the new thing because Joe, you told me that this was coming out this week. We have been, hearing about it.
Yep.
Basically, they are taking Winnie the Pooh and making him not so nice in his grown-up state. So we're going to talk about some things, Joe. We're going to, oh boy, because I have some thoughts about this type of idea. Yes.
Well, we have a lot to talk about, so we'll jump right into it. What's the story and what do we think of it?
Okay, so if you know the story of Winnie the Pooh, Christopher Robin is friends with Winnie the Pooh. I don't remember all the characters. There's Winnie the Pooh, Piglet, Eeyore. Isn't there like a bird or something like that in there?
Yeah, there's Tigger.
Yeah, Tigger. There you go.
Tigger.
Tigger. Tigger. So Tigger, Eeyore, and Piglet.
Yeah.
However, Joe, Christopher Robinson or Christopher Robbins?
Christopher Robbins.
Christopher Robbins, he grows up. He has to do things. He wants to go to school to be a doctor.
Bastard.
He's a good kid. Well, as we find out, that's what they think of. But he leaves. But he used to feed the creatures, and apparently they can't live in the wild. So then they resort to not only eating one of their friends, but they resort to eating humans. And then Christopher Robbins comes back. They terrorize him. Yeah. And then a group of women, and this is where the story got kind of wah. Mm-hmm. One of the friends has a traumatic experience. He's going to a psychologist, and she comes up with the idea that her and her friend should go off in the middle of nowhere in the woods, because this young girl was actually attacked by herself. So they say, hey, it's a good idea? Let's all go together in the middle of the woods and have some girl time. And then Winnie the Pooh starts terrorizing them as well, Joe.
That's right. Also, you left out kind of a part, not only because he wasn't feeding them, that they had to resort to cannibalism, but they also stewed up resentment towards him and other people. They swore off that they would never talk again. They would just become like subhuman, basically.
Yeah, you're right. That is an important part.
Here's the thing, Lamar.
Go ahead.
This movie opens up with like a montage explaining the whole premise about them growing up. The setup was great. But then the rest of the movie kind of dipped off into a slasher movie that had no real point. And that was the big problem with it. Like you had, how do I say this? Like there was, it wasn't going anywhere. It's just repetitive. Like they would just, oh, here's someone, we'll kill him. Here's someone. There was no like, okay, what's going on? How are we going to stop him? Like it was just very repetitive killing stuff.
It should have been Christopher Robbins. He invites some friends back to 100-acre woods.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, you graduated college, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, yeah, I used to have friends out here. He's like, no, you didn't. Goes out to find them. Then the creatures come and terrorize all of them. That's how I thought it was going to be. But like you said, it just becomes this happens, this happens, this happens. There's a point, but it's all over the place.
I thought it was going to be because Christopher Robbins goes back with his wife, and he's telling her the same thing, like you said. Well, I used to know these creatures, and blah blah. And she's like, "Yeah, I don't really believe it." I thought that after Winnie the Pooh kills her and him, that like a group of people will come searching for them or something,
yes,
or something like that. Okay, well, I'm gonna give it a half point because it did have a great premise and a great setup. But the movie didn't really capitalize on any of that.
I agree. It's a half a point. Like you said, they didn't capitalize on that part. And we're going to talk about nostalgia later on. What's the next one, Joe?
The next category, Lamar, of course, is characters.
Or lack thereof. Okay, here's the problem. Christopher Robbins, we know.
Yeah.
he's there, but then these random women, and I swear we've seen this movie before. It was called Girls Gone Dead because you have a group of women once again that go off kind of like in the wooded area.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is they're like, okay, we're gonna, turn off all our cell phones, just like in Girls Gone Dead. And so it becomes that typical slasher, and you're like, well, wait a minute, what happened to the whole hatred of Christopher Robins and everything?
But also, Lamar, the director of this film is the same guy that directed The Killing Tree that we reviewed a little bit of ways back, which was a similar girls out somewhere and bad, like something comes to kill them vibe.
Yeah.
But the problem was these, like you said, like what they gave one girl some kind of a backstory, like she had that traumatic event, but the rest of them were very, like you almost don't care about them because they're just there and then they start getting mauled.
Yeah.
And like you said, like the Christopher Robin, there was a great scene where he's captured and he's like, "Oh, we used to be friends. I'm sorry that I left you, blah, blah." And for a moment, like Winnie the Pooh, like starts crying and he's like, and then he's like, he gets angry and then he goes, I was like, okay, that was a good scene. Like that makes sense. But the rest of it and the rest of the characters, there's not much there.
No, not at all.
I'm going to give it a 0 for characters.
Joe, it's like you're reading my mind. It really is like, I think they missed an opportunity because it should have been all the friends with Christopher Robins.
Yeah.
And then maybe Christopher Robins goes, and then the rest of the friends have to find him, and then they get picked off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the next category, Lamar, is what did we think of the actual monsters in this movie? We only had Winnie the Pooh and Piglet.
If you're going to make an evil Winnie the Pooh, I feel like you got to really ramp it up.
Yeah.
Number one, when you don't give them, lines to speak or anything like that, I think you cut off like, a good little comedic part where you could go, "Oh, how do you something where it's like murderous or something like that."
Yeah.
So you take that part out. And I think I know why they did it, because it's kind of hard to move that mask.
Yeah.
Whatever. Which leads into my second point. They weren't really interesting like monsters.
Yeah, they were the basic slasher.
Yeah, it was just like they made a reference to Honey, but I thought they would do a little bit more with it. Like, maybe did they crush them into Honey or something? But or maybe they get trapped in Honey or something, something like that. But
yeah,
they really didn't play that up. And then Piglet, they did. It was just like people in mass rather than Winnie the Pooh and Piglet.
Yeah, that's what it seemed. It was like the performance was the typical kind of Leatherface, Jason, Michael Myers performance, where this was a perfect opportunity to go a little more cartoonish.
Yes.
Make it a little more outlandish or something, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah. What do you give it?
I'm going to give it a 0 because I feel like they missed an opportunity.
I'm going to give it a half point. Just because I still like the visual of it. Like, just see him, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was kind of cool. But,
you, Joe? Do you?
All right, next category. The special effects.
The special effects were okay. They had some good gut-punching stuff. People get things rammed through their heads and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of mallet deaths.
Yeah.
That
mallets,
kind of stuff.
Sledgehammers.
They even have a car explode in this, too.
Yeah. They did some stuff. And so I think shout out to Immortal Masks, I think was the original company that made that mask, and then they got it. So the mask is kind of cool, but it is limited on what it could do. It basically had one expression.
Yeah.
With a little bit of movement. I think the ears maybe moved a little bit.
I didn't see him move.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's cool when you first see it, but it's the same expression through the whole movie. And that's where you start losing for it, because you're waiting for it to do something else. It's just like the same thing, but I get it,
It might have frowned once.
Yeah,
that's the only thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. They did do a couple scenes with CGI, like blood or guts coming out of a meat grinder or something. That wasn't very good. They were better with the practical stuff.
Practical stuff was better.
I'll
Yes.
give them a half point.
I'll give them a 1.
Okay.
I'll give them a 1. Like you said, I will agree with the whole like mask. It was 1 note, but the practical stuff was good enough.
Okay.
I will say. Yes.
Well, our last category, Lamar, we're talking about the nostalgia factor.
Okay, this is gonna be a thing. We talked about this before because they did one with the Grinch, the mean one.
Yeah.
And what were the other ones that you mentioned, Joe?
Well, the same directors is in the works of producing a Bambi movie and a Peter Pan movie.
And a Peter Pan. So
basically, the premise is to make horror movies that ruin people's childhoods, I guess.
But the thing is, I don't feel like it's ruined enough, Joe, because it's kind of like it doesn't go far enough. Like you should have had like more, like have like, you know, Winnie the Pooh more like a monstrous thing, add some fur to the suit and all that kind of stuff. Honey gimmicks, all that kind of stuff.
He could have used some fur. That would have been better.
Yeah.
Now they were limited on characters because some of the characters are later characters that are not public domain yet. So like Tigger, he's not public domain yet.
Really?
Yeah, that came from a later story because that would have been like a twist. Like, let's say at the end, Winnie the Pooh is like gonna kill the people, and then Tigger just shows up and saves them because they're feuding or something, right? Like something interesting like that. Because by the way, the ending of this movie was just abrupt. It was like they were like, "Well, we got to end it now, so we just will," and it was just ended.
It was, yeah.
But yeah, so they were limited, and that might have been the reason why he didn't have any dialogue for the creatures, because some of the Winnie the Pooh's catchphrase was like, "Oh bother," like that's a Disney catchphrase.
Oh,
so maybe that limitation kept it from doing more stuff that would have had more of the nostalgia factor to it. So. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I like the premise of Winnie the Pooh being a psycho killer, but I think I might have walked away just a little bit let down. So I guess I'll give it a 0.
We're on the same track, Joe. I would have liked more, but it's not enough. If you're gonna ruin my childhood, go all full force.
Well, Lamar, we tallied the score, and this Winnie the Pooh gets a 1.5 out of 5.
Yeah, missed opportunity. Missed opportunity.
Yeah, it was like... I was super excited going in. I got super pumped at the beginning of the movie with the premise.
Yeah.
I still liked the premise, but it didn't have enough. They didn't go crazy.
Nope.
Does that wrap this up then?
Yeah, you know, they didn't destroy our childhoods, but they let us down.
All right.
Maybe they might do better in the sequel, though. You never know.
We'll see. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Peace.
Deuces.